I'd like to call to order the Graham County Board of Education regular meeting, February 1st, 2022. Mr. Matheson, would you mind leading us in prayer, please, sir?
Dear Lord, just want to thank you for this day, dear God. Just thank you, dear Lord, for our school system, dear God, for all of our faculty and staff, dear Lord, for our students, dear God. Just pray that you would continue to keep them safe during this time that we're going through, dear Lord. Just be with our board today as they make decisions that affect each and every one of us, dear God. Just pray for our country, all of our soldiers, dear God, that are in harm's way, dear Lord. Just pray that your protection on them, dear God. Just most of all this morning, I want to thank you, dear Lord, for your son, Jesus. Dear God, for the salvation that he provided for us on the old rugged cross. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda for today?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Any opposed? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of January 4th, 2022?
Approved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, the floor is now open for public comment period.
There's no one.
All right. Do I have a motion to close public comment period? Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, reports and discussion items. We'll do the principals first. Mr. Matheson.
Okay, so just a few things. We had progress reports be going out this week. First time for this second semester. We have ACT boot camp scheduled for our juniors on February the 8th and 9th. And then we'll have ACT week, February the 21st through the 25th, where we'll have various activities to help the students prepare for the ACT, which is coming up on March 1st for the juniors. And also on March 1st, we'll be giving the sophomores the PACT. So that's a big thing for us this month, and just in all of our classes, we're doing a little ACT prep and things like that to prepare for this. We have a field trip to WCU with Project Discovery on February the 11th. It's called Freshman Friday, and all the freshmen that are in Project Discovery will be going up to Western to tour the school. And in CTE, this month we'll be working on the Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment, and then we will start working on the 2-year local plan starting in March. So we'll be doing that and probably bring that to the board the 1st of May for the board's approval. Will be my hope. In sports at the high school, our wrestling team has had a fantastic season. We won the Smoky Mountain Conference Championship and the Tournament Championship again. And last night we won the first and second round of the state dual team tournament here at Robbinsville. And then we'll wrestle on Wednesday in the 3rd and 4th round, which are the actual quarterfinals and semifinals. Right now that is scheduled at Avery County. However, Coach Odom has been on the phone with the High School Athletic Association this morning because they have not followed their rules as far as how they choose the location for the 3rd and 4th rounds. Geographically and by mileage, it should have been at Swain County, but Avery County had called the High School Athletic Association. My understanding, they talked to everyone down there, and there is a 2-mile difference, Avery being the furthest, and they gave it to Avery anyway, which goes totally against their rules, which kind of makes you understand why so many people across the state have been fed up with the High School Athletic Association and their actions over the past few years, and why the General Assembly started, moving to try to take them over. So that supposedly they are going to look back into this, and it could change. If it does, it'll be at Swain County on Wednesday. Both of our girls and boys basketball teams have been playing real well as of late. The boys, I think, won 4 in a row, the girls 5 in a row. And we have 2 huge home games this week, tonight against Murphy and Thursday night against Cherokee. If our girls win both of those, That'll put them in the driver's seat to win the Smoky Mountain Conference Championship. And it definitely go a long way in getting our boys moving up in the standings. They've been playing real well. Then we play away at Andrews on Friday. The conference tournament will start at the end of next week, and it is at Swain County this year. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. Okay, Mr. Nails.
Good morning. Ms. Walsh asked me to step in for her again today because she's on a field trip with the 7th grade to the Biltmore House. They read the Serafina novel in 7th grade, and it's based from the Biltmore House, so they're all doing that today. As far as update with testing, in the middle school, we're finishing up our second round of universal screening, which is the iReady assessment. And the preliminary, everybody's not done yet, but the preliminary results of that is seeing good growth, which is expected with the learning gap we're trying to keep to close up. Some students as much as 2 years already in their growth, which is encouraging. We will do our check-in 2 tests next week to see how our pacing is going with our teachers. And we just last week reviewed with Mr. White our Ebos data from last year. And it's kind of a daunting look. It's kind of odd to read, but overall our growth looks really good in middle school, even with the gap we're in. Middle school winter sports just ended. Wrestling and basketball have ended for the middle school. As I said last meeting, wrestling had a conference championship, I'm pretty sure. Basketball players had a good season, but we didn't finish strong. One of them still had a really good season. Spring sports start up this week. Middle school softball and baseball actually start tryouts tomorrow. Middle school boys are having an optional practice today for baseball, and track starts February 16th. And then with grades, report cards, we'll have our progress reports going out next week, right before practice conference. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Nails. Ms. Hooper.
I do have some data that I'd like to share with the board that we just have from the middle of the year, and it's some of our Ebos data that Mr. Nellens has referred to from the middle school. This is for the elementary school. So I'm going to hand out some stuff for you and just explain it to you. This report will look the same for all the schools, and I think it's important to note that in 2021 last year, with the pandemic, with releasing at 2 o'clock, with having a remote day every Wednesday, with all the things that teachers had to deal with last year, in all 3 schools in Graham County schools, our schools all 3 met growth. So that's a huge shout out to how hard our teachers work. And then, we would get frustrated with parents who we felt like we couldn't reach with remote. But I also think that this is a picture of a lot of parents who would run themselves crazy trying to find hot spots and just go the extra mile to make sure that their kids did have what they needed to be successful, even in all of those trying times. So the first report I want to talk to you about is this elementary Ebos report. So red does not meet growth, green meets growth, and blue exceeds growth. And all you can ask for a teacher in any given school year is to grow a kid a year's worth of growth for a year's worth of school. Regardless of whether they reach grade level proficiency or not, all any teacher can be asked to do is grow a kid a year for the year that they have them in class. So if you look at this report for the elementary school, the state the way that they define a year's growth is 0. So if you look here on this report, the little dotted line that goes up through here, that is where any teacher that hits their dot or any grade level on that dotted line, the state says you have hit absolute 1 year of exact growth with your kids. And that's why that year is that line is green. Now, they also give us a little window for growth, which is from -2 to +2. So -2 would be the light side of the green here. +2 would be the dark side of the green. If you can land yourself anywhere in that realm right there, the state says you've met growth, okay? So if you look, At our K2 early literacy at the beginning of the year, or at the top of the page, this is for first grade and second grade was what was reported. They did not report on kindergarten last year, but you can see that first and second grade did excellent in growing our kids for reading last year. And again, this is last year. This is your pandemic year. If you look at math, we don't ever get growth scores for third grade in math because they don't do a beginning of your math test. They only do a beginning of your reading test. The reason we don't have fourth grade on here for last year is because in fourth grade, those kids didn't take third grade reading or math EOGs because of COVID in 2020, so they couldn't project growth for them. That's why we just have fifth and sixth grade. I want to say here something about fifth grade. Fifth grade math has historically been a place where we struggle in our data. Over the years, it's just been consistent. I do want to give out a shout out to Angela McGuire. She's our fifth grade math teacher. Last year was her first year of teaching. So her first year of teaching math ever in fifth grade, and even though it didn't meet growth the way that we wanted it to, she still got proficiency scores and growth scores that was similar to years past from other people who have been in fifth grade that didn't have a pandemic. So I feel like she's going to do great. She's always open to suggestions, to learning. The kids really seem to like her. So I feel like in fifth grade math, we will be headed in the right direction. But even in a pandemic last year, she got better scores than we've had in previous years. And then if you look at reading, you can see across the board where overall, with just a few other spots, we are green or blue, and the same for math. And so the back page of this report just gives you a little explanation for red, green, and blue, if you want to read that for yourself. But our overall, if you look at the very back page of this report, this is the growth composite, and you see where it says for Robbinsville Elementary School, looks like this, it's the very back page. It's 0.41. So I told you that the state says between -2 and +2 is a year's growth. If this would have been just flat 0, that would have meant that Robbinsville Elementary School made exactly a year's growth. So it's a little bit above 0. So even if you take all of those numbers that I showed you on the first page and you average them all together, last year in a pandemic, one of the hardest years we've ever had in education, your teachers and your students showed a year or a little more of growth. So I thought that you would, just to kind of show you what that looks like. And that's not just true for Robbinsville Elementary School, that's true for the middle and the high school. All three schools met growth. This is the last thing. This is our middle of the year in-class data. This is our K3 literacy assessment from the state. So I just wanted to share these with you too. And let me just explain this a little bit as well. So in the chart over here with the numbers, and this is for every grade level, I'll just talk you through kindergarten and then you can kind of look through yourself. The beginning of the year is the orange. That's our beginning of year scores with students who are well below, at benchmark, or above benchmark. Okay? You can see in the numbers here on the column, so it's got it in number form or graph form, whichever one you prefer. In kindergarten, the well below, we had 83.50% of our kids scoring well below average at the beginning of the year. Middle of the year, that number dropped to 50.83%. So you see this difference right here. We have a difference of 32.67% of our kids that went from well below average to either just below, at, or above average. So does that help you to be able to understand the chart? So what we want to see is the well below lines shrinking and just below, at, or above growing. Does that make sense?
I'll say that again.
Okay, so here, this is the middle of the year is the blue.
Right,
So we want to see that well below line dropping,
okay.
and we want to see below, at, or above increasing. Okay, so that means that we're slowly moving kids from well below toward benchmark when you see that happening.
Or if you want to use the numerical chart on the left, you want to, in that fourth column where it says difference, you want a negative on the first line and you want positive numbers
On the other
on the
line,
rest of them.
that means that we're moving kids. Does that make sense? And you can see that it's there for first grade, second grade, and third grade. And as a general rule, when you look all the way across, you see that the well belows are going down and the other numbers seem to be going up. And I just thought that that would be good information for you to have. That's at each grade level to show how we're moving kids from beginning to middle of the year. We're happy with the growth that we're seeing on that. Do y'all have any questions
At
on
some
that?
point in time, did some of these kids have to take this test at home this year?
So we have had very few kids, but it has happened where a kid's been in quarantine and the window's coming to a close and they've had to take it with their teacher via virtual, but it's not a computer program like iStation where they just log on and do it completely alone at home. Even for the ones that have had to do it at home in quarantine, the teachers had to be virtual with the child. It still had to be face-to-face as much as possible, one-on-one with the teacher. Okay? Y'all have any questions about any of that data? It's just something for you to look through, but we were pleased with it, especially with everything, with all of our school meeting growth and all of the craziness that was last year. Very pleased with that. Some other things, Del Farr at the high school has a I'm a Difference Maker athletic group, and he started bringing some of the athletes over, and they're reading with some of our kids in K1. We're going to extend that out probably to grades 2-3. We've also talked about doing a lunch with an athlete for some of the kids. Our students and teachers are really enjoying that, so we're very pleased that that started at the elementary school and that Mr. Farr reached out to us to do that. This month, starting on February the 14th, we're going to be a part of the Random Act of Kindness, and it's going to run the 14th through the 25th. We're working with the Snowbird Youth Center with Zena Rattler and Carrie Beth Holloway, and we are collecting items for our soldiers. And so we're going to have grade level competitions. The students are going to be provided with an approved list of things to collect. Whatever grade level collects the most items to be sent to our soldiers is going to win a pizza party, and that's what we're going to do collectively as a school for the Random Act of Kindness. Our current COVID numbers as of today, 13.47% of the elementary school is absent. COVID-related absences is 9.04% of all of those absences, so 49 kids. And staff absences are down to 2. Over the past month, we've consistently ran student absences between 25 and 30% of our kids out, and 10 to 15% of our staff out. So we are starting to see a positive trend with getting out of some of this. But I do want to say, if we had not been in masks this past month, this is with us only sending home the positive kid. If we would have had to do all the contact tracing and everything that would have been required for us being without masks, I can't even, we would have 25 to 30% out with masks. So I can't imagine what that would have looked like had we not been in masks. So I just wanted you to kind of know where we were with that. And also with staff, when you're looking at 10, 12, 15 subs being required across the whole district, we all pretty much share the same sub list. There was days of this last month that we were having to pull people to cover because there was just no subs to do it. So we were very thin, but we've made it. I feel like we're seeing a better trajectory. But if we had not been masked because of the requirements and the way the Toolkit's outlined, I feel like that we would have not been able to operate.
Thank you, Ms. Hook. Ms. Wiggins?
Hey, good morning. So I've got some things here for you as well. And I wanted to share the numbers with you, the data with you from counselors and social workers. I had made a commitment to you, I think the last time I was able to see you, that I would try to be faithful to report numbers to you. And I wanted to give you just a moment to go through and see if you had any questions. Again, these are numbers for counselors and social workers with the mental health touring process team. First page is counselor numbers. We have 3 counselors. And then the second page is social work numbers. We have 2 of those. Do you have any questions based on what you're seeing there that you might specifically want to ask me rather than me going over this line by line?
When do these individual counseling sessions occur?
So those are sessions that can be unannounced. A student might have a situation that they immediately feel like they need some assistance with or some extra attention with. So it's not a set time. It might be perhaps a knock on the counselor's door that says, can you help me? Then again, they might be, let's follow up with you tomorrow. That might be counted in that same number as well. Any other questions? So Ms. Knott and I were speaking the other day, and I said the month of February is a very hard month. If you're not tired by the month of February, something's wrong. You've managed a pandemic, you've had cold weather, all of the things that make you tired as an educator kind of hit you full force in February. And I sat this morning before this board presentation and I thought, what is it that I need to say to this school board to let you know what your mental health touring process team is tackling and what your nurses, your counselors, your social workers are doing on a daily basis. Some of this you may or may not have heard, and I just want to do a very quick review. Since August, this team has had some element or some assistance with making sure that we have purchased some mental health assessment guide materials so that we can know how students are performing in their classrooms, how their overall mental health, how that type of data shakes out into the classrooms. We have developed, with the assistance of Ms. Knott, a handle with care. So that allows us with the Sheriff's Department to have an understanding that if there is a situation in our community that requires some extra love and attention the next morning with school personnel, they are able to give us a call and say to us, we have had this happen in our community. There are 3 elementary children that you might just want to handle with care without there being so much information offered, but just enough for the school system to be able to say, we need to do some implementation of some care for these students. We purchased what's called HeartMap. This is a device that we are working now to find the iPads to sustain them that will also help students regulate their anxiety. It's a great teaching technique that we hope to be able to implement within the next month. We have completed, or let me say we are in the draft phases of working on our memorandums of understanding with the Departments of Social Services, our mental health agencies, to make sure that our students have the very best of what our community can offer. It's been mentioned, I don't know that you know this currently, we have no face-to-face clinician right now in our community.
Ms. Pringle went over that in her board
Yes.
training this morning.
So I'm glad she covered that with you. We are working diligently with Via Health. I've been on the phone trying to make sure that our kids at our school systems have what should be afforded to them. They need somebody face-to-face, and I'm glad she covered that with you. So we're working on trying to get a memorandum of understanding so that when students have a situation that requires extensive mental health issues or counseling, that we can establish that with someone face-to-face. We are working diligently to get small groups offered for students. If you'll look on your data, there's a line item, and I can't remember exactly which one it is. I think it's probably midway down.
It's 0.
It's 0. That's a problem.
Okay, it's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
That is a problem, and I know that small group counseling sessions are very challenging because of the nature of how we operate school systems. It is very hard to find a common time to pull students out of classes that can work to help with issues that are really profound in their lives. We are making a concerted effort. Sunny is part of her job description is to begin implementing small groups. So I'm really excited to begin to see those numbers go upward, and we can begin to report what we are seeing in small group counseling sessions. As a part of our mental health core and crisis team, we partner with what's called the LICC. That's our local interagency coordinating council. We've had some really good trainings. Mr. Moody sits in on this team. We've been trained by Amera Health Coteras, that's with Medicaid transformation, so that we can assist families that might have some questions with Medicare and Medicaid and how all that's changing. We've been trained by Kepro. We've been trained by HOTS. And also the one that I'm most excited about to report to you is that we are now working to be trained with how to assist students with panic attacks from Duke University. That is our newest training that we've got lined up that should be coming very soon. We've hired 2 unlicensed assistive nurse personnel to be able to help with COVID contact tracing. So after saying all of that, you can see why we're tired. You can see why the month of February, we're almost in some sense celebrating all the accomplishments that we've made since August. And that's just a few of the things that I have here on my list. Do y'all have any questions?
That's a very busy group of people. That's a core support for all of our students and really for our staff. We're looking at the month of February as Kindness Month and doing some initiatives there, getting some things out to schools, trying to do some fun things and not so heavy things, because it's a tough month for students and it's a tough month for staff, just the winter and where we are in the school year. So we're trying to be aware of that and do some activities.
The only other thing that I can think to share with you, and Mr. Moody, you might be able to give some comments on this as well. This particular team that I'm referring to also doubles as your crisis team in the event of something happening on a school campus that would require a team to be implemented to help with crisis. And we've reviewed our Safe Schools manual. We keep those on our phones electronically. I think it's very important if you have a plan like that it's not written, but it's something that you know how to execute. Can you think of anything that you want to share about that?
No, I think we've got everything covered and unfortunately what's to happen, everybody should know what to do. We've not practiced a mass evacuation drill in years because of COVID. We may not do it this year again. So we've got several teachers that that's not had an experience, but hopefully if things get back to normal, we'll start back with that and going through those procedures. But we are having sophomore hard lockdowns, working with our barricades, our shades, and protocols and things like that. So but other than that, everything's good.
And just as a reminder, we have every staff member, regardless of what your role was, to jump on a school bus, know how to drive a school bus, in the event that you be the one to have to drive that school bus off of campus, whether you had a license or not.
And just to echo probably what you heard this morning, Sunday gave you the presentation, but all staff members have been trained in 6 hours of mental health. Very, very proud of that. Very proud of that. That's a tremendous mandate and a tremendous undertaking, and it's successfully completed for Grayson County Schools. We can put a big check mark. We are leaps and bounds ahead of many state schools right now with having that completed.
And the most important part about that is that our staff would be better prepared to deal with the situation early on in the school year if it were to occur.
Yes. We will have a presentation if you have any questions, perhaps from our school nurse. I'm going to call her in just a moment, have her step over if you have any COVID data related questions.
She's out here.
Very good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wiggins. Ms. Parker.
All right, so a quick after-school update. As Ms. Hooker was saying about absences, that has affected our numbers just a little bit, but at elementary, we're still seeing around 18 kids a day. Middle school, around 12 kids, and high school is around 6 kids. We are looking into starting a music program for the middle school and high school kids, possibly elementary if we can get that worked out as well. Maybe some beginning guitar lessons, piano lessons, just something for those kids to do and have some exposure to Miss Watkins, possibly getting into the band. Also, Sunny has been coming out once a week working with high school, middle school kids and doing a mental health lesson with them, and they have really enjoyed having her. They work really well with her. And also, since I posted it on Facebook, the blessing boxes, the community has really helped us with that and kept them stocked, so we've only had to go out and check on those a couple times, but the community has really took to those. So that's pretty much it for after school this month. So. Good job.
Did I miss anybody? School trips.
I've got one.
Right.
Our junior trip, is gonna be coming up. The dates are scheduled for March the 30th through April the 3rd. And, currently, there are only 14 students that are going on the trip, and then because of the low number, there'll just be one chaperone, that'll be Mr. Davis. We have several more students that were scheduled, but in New York, they have a vaccine mandate to go inside, so many of the students have dropped out because of that mandate. So we have 14 kids going, and Mr. Davis will be their chaperone, and again, they'll be traveling to Washington, D.C. and to New York City, and they will be put with another school group from another school, like on the bus, you know, and be going around touring with another group. So we don't know who that is, but it'll be the same age kids. So.
Okay, and you mentioned the trip to Western on February 11th.
Yeah, that shouldn't need board approval, though.
Oh, okay.
That's just a regular
Okay.
field trip.
Yes, okay. Do I have a motion to approve the junior trip from March 30th to April 3rd? 14 students. Mr. Davis will be the chaperone.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed?
And Mr. Nelson also just got a text message from Coach Odom. The High School Athletic Association has changed the venue to Swain County
Very
for
good.
tomorrow night's third and fourth round matches. And if we win tomorrow night, our wrestling team would wrestle for the dual team state championship on Saturday in Greensboro. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mathis.
Is there a middle school, do you have any middle school trip, Mr. Stewart?
The only thing coming up will be the eighth grade coach trip.
And it's already been
Yeah,
approved.
it's been approved earlier in the year.
Yeah, we already approved.
If that's coming along, as far as you know?
Yeah,
Do you know how many kids you got going?
it's in the 50s.
I'm thinking 53,
Yeah,
maybe.
53.
Okay, Jennifer, Miss-
Ours is coming up, the Wednesday through Friday before spring break. The last time I looked, we have 24-ish kids going, or 24-ish, kids going, and several parents, all the parents have been notified that we have to have a past drug test and background check, for them to be able to go. Some of them are working through that too, so we're moving along.
Have you got kids that are okay with paying their fee?
Yeah, and we have had some community donations to take care of a few kids.
What about you, Mr.? Do you know, Mr. Stewart?
I mean, some of them still owe on it, but they're all, we're doing fundraisers and they're making payments.
But you don't think there'll be any kids not go because they can't finish?
Not that I'm aware of it.
Okay.
Good.
And I will say, Explorica has refunded those parents that where their kids have dropped out of the junior trip. They were able to get a refund for that.
And on some of our last fundraiser, which was 2 gift boxes, we had Ingalls donate something. Blush Salon, which is just opened, Miley Parker did a donation, Marlene Honey, Karen Duckett, the Cheesecake Chick. We had a great community donations for those 2 gift sets. And we had one student who raised $500 for their trip, just with that one fundraiser. So, and of course it didn't cost anything because of our generous community donations. There was a gift card from Crown in there, I think a gas card. So it costs nothing on our part because of the wonderful donations from our community. And then we had some kids who really worked hard. And like I said, one kid raised up to $500 for their
Hey,
trip.
whatever happened to duct taping you guys to the wall?
It's coming up. It's
Well,
coming
will
up.
y'all keep us updated on if any kid needs money?
Mhm. If we get down to the wire and we have some that are struggling, we'll reach out.
Mr. Green, budget amendments.
You've always got something, Mr. Gray.
Busy man?
Okay, First item here that I've got would be budget amendments. The first page here, these are budget amendments to the federal fund. First section is PRC 17, Vocational Education Program Improvement. We received an additional $1,509 and plan to use that for supplies. Next section down is PRC 203, ESSER 3, teacher bonuses. The allotment there is $85,083. These are bonuses that are not subject to retirement. These are for classroom teachers and instructional support who are paid out of state funds. I was very pleased with the legislature's budget with all these bonuses. I think the folks really deserve some of these bonuses. But this bonus was for state funded classroom teachers and instructional support only. What we decided to do, we felt like that everybody in the system deserved this bonus as well, so we used our ESSER 3 funds, which is PRC 181, to pay all the other folks that were not included in this bonus.
How much did that include per teacher?
It's $1,000 per classroom teacher and instructional support paid from state funds. Any questions about that particular law? Okay, next down, PRC 108, Educational Technology. We received an additional $52 and plan to use that for supplies and materials. And the next one down, I imagine under your mask you've got a small smile. This is PRC 174. This is ESSER 2, Child Nutrition Supplements. What we could pay out of that was retention bonuses and recruitment bonuses, and we decided to use all of that for retention bonuses. The original allotment was $7,932. And last month I received a call from a representative from DPI, and they said, we have an allotment revision for this particular PRC. I went in the system, looked, and they gave us an additional $1. So I sent them an email and said, you really want us to go through this process of revising the budget, sending it to you, you review it, send it back to us, and then we upload it into our accounting system? And they said, unfortunately, yes. So
That cost us way more than $1.
it did, yes. Next page, this is Fund 8, where we account for our grants. This is a new source of funding. It's PRC 670. It's COVID testing support staff, and I think Ms. Wiggins spoke about that briefly earlier. The amount of this budget is, or this allotment is $86,463, and that's to fund the two nurses that we have. And I think that is until June 30th. Is that correct?
It's for nurse helpers.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say, both of our nurses have had COVID over the last month. And if we had not had the help and support of these people to be in the nurse's office and help us get through this, I don't know what we would have done. Just in this last month, they have been truly, absolutely irreplaceable for us.
And just in case we forget to say this somewhere else, our nurses and these nurse helpers and a lot of our other staff, this is just really not an 8 to 3 job. When you're contact tracing, it's a before school, after school. We've had many conversations on weekends and phone calls that go out. Several of us in this room have helped with these contact tracing phone calls in the evenings. So this has been a big effort, and it's taken all of us, and I'm very appreciative of everybody for that.
Any questions about budget amendments?
One thing, I probably should have asked this earlier. I have something, it's an estimated allocation from teacher supplement assistant allotment. And Graham County's on this teacher supplement assistant per state funded teacher, and I have a total of $4,250. How is that going to be? How does that go out?
We have not received an allotment for that yet.
Okay.
So once we receive the allotment, that payment This is a supplement, it's separate state allotments, and PRC 71's new. Like I said, once we receive the allotment, then that goes to state funded.
It says state-funded teachers.
State-funded classroom teachers and instructional support.
Now, keep in mind that that says state-funded teachers. You can have teachers in the same grades or the same departments that aren't the same funded. They're not, some of them may be locally funded, some may be federally funded. So if we choose to pay all teachers that's going to cost the board out of essential local money, or, yeah, I mean, it's going to have to come out of.
But this is broken down by county. Some counties are not getting any.
Exactly.
Right.
And some
Exactly.
counties are getting some. So why did the state specifically say state-funded teachers?
But it's this state money. I mean, they're not
That's their
going to fund
determination, yes.
federal teachers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would it go, I mean, is it something that would have to go out in lump sum or payments or what?
Well, it's a supplement for this year. We discussed this. Probably what we'll do is we will prorate that through 10 months. When it's approved, then we'll pay that in February if that's the case.
So it's not been approved?
We have not received the allotment yet.
Okay.
You can't make the payment if you don't know how much money you've given.
That's true.
Right. Plus, there's no chart of accounts that's in our system. The chart of accounts has to be downloaded into our county software to be able to actually pay these folks.
Yep.
So you
And
gotta have a
I want to make
budget.
it clear with a lot of these, let me say that I am very pleased with the state budget. It was very education friendly for the first time in many years. We saw some things in the state budget that were really nice. However, there are some line items that when it says state funded teachers, just what I said, not all of I don't know what percentage of our teachers are state funded. You got an approximation?
I'm between 90 and 95% of our classroom teachers.
Well, but
Instructional support are state funded.
Right, so
We
you
do
got
have
some
some
more.
local, we have some federally funded classroom teachers and
Exactly.
instructional support that, like Ms. Knight said, I'm very grateful for this budget the state gave us this year, but it's been very difficult for us to implement when certain groups have been excluded.
because the state's not going to pay for local and federally funded people, but to be equitable, because people do equitable jobs, it's hard to say if you've got, 6 teachers, and I don't know that this is the case, but this is just a general example. If you've got 6 teachers in one grade level, and 5 out of 6 are state funded, but that 6th person's funded locally or federally,
Based on the state
are you going to
budget,
say, well, just
excluded.
because this is the way you're funded, we're not going to give you the supplement? So, I mean, we're having to make up the difference in some categories.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's great to have the money, but it's also costing us on the back side of it, where we're taking that out of other line items.
Do we have to do that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you're the ones that's going to deal with that as a board, to say,
If we
it's
don't
not my
do it.
fault that I'm not state funded and I'm doing the same job as somebody else is. Why am I not getting this? So I guess that's a decision. If y'all choose to make it, it would be much easier on Mr. Green and his staff just to say, here's the report, here's who we're paying. But if you're looking at equity and what they do, I don't know that that's the best approach, but that's certainly something the board can, right now, if you want to discuss.
But is it federally funded? Is it is any of that the grant money that we are saying that only lasts for 3 years? Is that what we're talking about?
Well, no, but you've got Title I, you've got a lot of, some federal funds there that people are paid for. Your CTE teachers, some of them are paid through federal funds. They will not be unless the board chooses to, or we may have this conversation, that $42.50 will not be a part of CTE salary. If it's a federally funded, CTE position. So there's a lot to think about. It's great to have the state money, but if it doesn't cover, which, I mean, the state doesn't have any obligation to cover federal funds or local funds, it's just a kind of a moral dilemma.
So there's no time a federal funded teacher has gotten any money that a state funded teacher hasn't.
Yes, but we pay for it out of other funds that we've pulled. So for this $42.50, that's the that's the kind of conversation we're gonna have to have, is do we pay that from somewhere else? Yeah.
Do I have a motion to approve the budget amendments as presented by Mr. Green?
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, the 2022-23 school calendar.
Chairman, please, I have one more item.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. This is a contract to audit with Anderson, Smith and White, and we just simply need the chairperson to sign that so that they can, Anderson, Smith and White can go forward and start to plan their audit for fiscal year 2022.
Attorney Davis, do we need a motion on that to approve that contract? Okay.
Do I have a motion to approve the contract presented by Mr. Green?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Now do I have a motion to approve the budget amendments presented by Mr. Green?
So moved.
Yeah, have a second. Or did I already done that?
You're good to go.
Oh, okay. Hey,
We're on the school
you
calendar.
confused me when you said, hey, I've got something else. Okay, 2022-23 school calendar, Ms. Knight.
So, yeah, so this in front of you, in your packets, probably toward the back of your packet, you should have a school calendar, a proposed draft calendar for the 22-23 school year. It looks very much like this school year calendar. This calendar committee is not one that is district driven. It is driven by school-based representatives. Each school sends representatives. And we kind of laugh and say, yeah, we're here 12 months anyway, so this is your 10-month calendar, so let's make it work. The representatives take this back to their schools. Input is given at the school level. If there are major debates, then we have done a poll. We did a poll for some work days, for how to use some of the work days this year. There are certain requirements that the state recommends. And essentially, the bottom line is you have to have 185 school days or a minimum of 1,025 hours. And you've heard this for many years now since this legislation has passed. One different thing that, and also know, we have not had guidance this academic year about a school calendar, so we have to go on the last guidance that we have. And so that's how we approve this calendar. If there's guidance that comes out in the 11th hour, then we will have to come back to the school board and after the planning committee meets and revise this, but we have to go back to the last updated guidance we have, which was updated on June 30th, 2020. So just what you see in front of you, the only difference that's been in there the last couple of years is the placement of some mandated remote days. There are 5 days that, according to the calendar requirements, that have to be in there. So essentially you have to have either like I said, 1,025 minimum hours or 185 days with an additional 5 remote days inserted into the calendar. There's 4 teacher work days, 11 holidays, 10 annual leaves, and really that all amounts to 215 days for employees. Employees are on days, students are on hours. That's the most confusing thing in the world. We spend many hours developing a calendar. So this is, if you have questions, I'm glad to try to answer them. But it's,
Well, I called Miss Knight yesterday to try to get things straightened out, so this didn't make this too long, and maybe Miss Davis, you can help us. We have these remote days embedded, built into our calendar, and I looked at this, and I looked at some other things, and the hours, I can't seem to find the hours. The general statute does say the number of instructional hours in an instructional day may vary according to local board policy and does not have to be uniform among schools in an administrative unit. Local boards may approve instructional plan that includes days, varying amounts of instructional time. And Ms. Knight gave me the hours, the days, and an hour is 6.33. I would just like to know really where that comes from. I couldn't find it in our policy, and it might be a good idea to put it in our policy. I couldn't find it in state. I couldn't find it in this, and I couldn't find it in our board policy. And then it also says that remote instructional days are, and this is from the general statute 115C 84.3, is intended to give public schools a limited ability to use remote instructional during severe weather or emergencies that have traditionally caused school closing. It is separate from the COVID-19 days, and Ms. Knight and I talked about that, which are discussed in a further document. So I just felt like that maybe somewhere we needed to have the 6.33 if that's what we had adopted. And I looked at some other school calendars and some other school systems, and they do not have these 5 remote days built into their calendars. They have them at the discretion of the superintendent. So I served on, as a teacher, I served on the school calendar committee, and it is tough. It is a tough job. And so I have a little bit of a problem with putting these remote days in here, sending kids home and saying, you're home today, and when we really need time in the classroom. Then I went on to ask her if it could be used for, like, if we had, like when we close for school for snow or bad weather, let's just call it a remote day. Is that what we do or can do? But if we've got to build into the calendar, we already have them there.
Well, so I think we're talking about 2 different things. So there's shall, so let me read from your, Bill 113 guidance for this. It says remote instructional days. 5 days shall be included within the calendar, applies to all school units. Yes. So that's included within the calendar. Yes. So any additional days then are at the discretion of the superintendent. So if we were to have a snow day, for example, we could call that a remote day so that we could use that for instruction. I did tell Ms. Knott that sometimes that we have done that in the past, but we almost have to be ready for that. If you're going to call it a remote day, you need to make sure that all the students have their devices there. And lots of times when we have snow, we're not aware that we're going to have snow. Sometimes we can be proactive, but not always. So sometimes you maybe could, but I think we're talking about either you have your COVID remote days that are supposed to be in the calendar per this guidance, or you have, for the first time, and really since they changed this legislation, the superintendent couldn't call remote days 3 years ago. That wasn't an option. You can call them now for any days in addition to that 5 for the reasons that you mentioned. So I think we're talking about 2 different things. And I understand the remote issue too. It's hard. Not everybody has remote access. But you know, it is my understanding, certainly my interpretation, and Attorney Davis, you might want to weigh in on this, but that we don't have a choice but to have 5 remote days in there. If you'll see in the calendar that, I mean, there are some days that we've tried, it doesn't work out perfectly, but there are some days, you know, that maybe we've tried to tack on to another work day, or, you know, tried to be a little helpful with those, but really, I see it as a requirement when it says shall.
But it's really considered a student day.
It's a student day.
So if the teacher doesn't work that day, they have to take sick leave?
That would be correct, because it's an instructional day.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. It's not, they couldn't take annual leave?
They cannot take annual leave on a remote day. They are to be instructing students in some capacity.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What are you finding out about the 6.33 hours? Can I get a copy of that you just read? Where does the 6.33 hours come from? I'm trying to figure that out. I couldn't find that.
So we look at typically what guides you can not count from the time that you arrive at school to the time that you leave because you're looking at instructional hours. So I can't tell you exactly at what point we decided 6 hours was our instructional day. I don't have that. I mean, as far as going back in the minutes when it would be. But we really, what controls that, we looked at the high school mainly. It would control really the calendar is controlled by high school in a sense because we're trying to get that first semester in by the end of the, by Christmas break. So we really looked at instructional minutes at the high school.
We have 4 blocks that are 91 minutes each.
Yes.
So
that's what we looked at. And then several years ago, in an effort which really has, I think, paid off for us, before we had the flexibility with remote, before we had the flexibility with some other, we added 20 minutes to the school day, which, typically, our school day is a little shorter, has been than other schools in other counties. That's at the discretion. Your school day is not set in stone by state statute. It's really at the local discretion, so they're all going to look different. So we added 20 minutes so that we wouldn't have to, when we were having, I think we added it the year we had so much snow, and we just ended up being here till the middle of June. So we began to add 20 minutes a day, which is really not that much, and now nobody even notices, to the schedule so that we have that built in and that time accrued already. So if you have 2 weeks of snow, you can not worry about making up some of those days maybe. Some of the days that we've just recently had, our students will not be making up those hours because we have accrued extra time and we will not have to make those up. Teachers have to work anyway because they're working days. They have 215 days that they work. But students don't have the requirement of days, they're on hours. So our extra accrued hours help us in the end of the year. And I know it's very confusing and a mess, but that's just something we started. Other school systems have since some of them have went to that. Ms. Hooper?
The reason too that we started adding the 20 minutes, if y'all will remember that year that we had like 4 Saturdays that we had to come and try to make that, that was horrible. And so we added that time to never find ourselves in that position again.
Yeah, Saturdays are pretty much useless, but we found ourselves having to do that because then we were on days and we had to have those days. Now that we've had some flexibility with hours, it just made sense to us as a system to add a little bit of time so that over the course of the year, you accrue some extra hours.
Mr. Chairman, I think it'd be a good idea for Ms. Davis to look into our board policy on, because it's strictly, the statute states that it's board policy, and I really couldn't find that 6.33, and I don't know if you think that needs to...
Being inflexible, I think about the 6.33. Every school system, there's one adjoining school system that does the same thing you do. They've added 20 minutes to the day. And they kept it. They kept it because of the General Assembly finally changing from the rigid 185 days to the 1,025 hours. So all the school systems have adjusted their school day.
That's true, but would it be a good idea to have that in our policy?
No, I don't think so, because next year it may not be 6.33 hours. I think what's in our school system.
It wasn't last year. Last year we left it 2 o'clock. We still had a remote hour, but it would
what's in our
we tie
policy?
hands, I think, at some point
What is in our policy, and I'll be glad to pull that and bring it, is that the Board of Education follows the calendar requirements.
Okay.
And that's the flexibility. This has been a godsend, really, the flexibility that's been permitted. So it's not going to be mandated 6.33. You're going to follow the calendar.
You're really looking for that 1,025 minimum hours.
And the other thing that's in that calendar statute is that it's different for this school system, probably Avery County too, because we have a waiver.
Because of the waiver, yes. I did
For example, Cherokee County didn't get their waiver last year, so their calendar changed. And you have to have that flexibility. So as long as you're following the strict guidelines, of the calendar statute.
So you said, you think we're good on our policy?
I do, and I'll double check it, but
Okay,
you don't want to put in 6.33 hours because next year you'll forget to remove it.
okay.
That's not necessarily the case.
I don't see this going away, but
Do I have a motion to approve the 2022-23 school calendar?
so moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Personnel, Ms. Knight.
Yes, I'll bring you a slate of personnel candidates during closed session.
Okay. Facilities update, Mr. White.
Sure. A little document here for you.
Thank you.
I'll try to make this quick for you. That one?
That's what you asked.
Can I have this, Ms. Knight?
Yep.
Thank you.
From my understanding, and I'd like to thank Mr. Nelson for stepping in for me last month. From what I understand, he provided this to you guys and you liked it, so I wanted to start providing it to you also. But as you can see, on January 25th at 10 o'clock, we met for our monthly construction meeting. Just a couple of things that I'll try to point out in here. Everything is going really well. The roofing materials are on, roofing drains are hooked up, exterior walls are going up. It just looks like everything looks really good. If you will look at the pictures in the back, now, if you've not been by to take a look, I would strongly encourage you to do so. But you can see how the progress that's been made. Things are going, like I said, really well. If you look at the next to last page of pictures there, where you see the brick wall, in the background of that is the current building that's already there. And in the front foreground, in the front right, on the bottom right of that picture, that's kind of a mock-up. If you got to remember, the brick that was in the existing part of the building, that was 30 years ago. And so the brick that we are trying to pick out right now to match it, that right there is basically the best that we can do.
I think that's pretty close.
So it's really close. Of course, you know, if you look at the grout in between, by the time that color changes and all that, things will be really close. So, but things are going real well. As you can see in some of the pictures there's with the freezing and thawing and the rain and the snow and all that type of stuff, there's some muddy messes in there. But they are dry in at this point, and so they're really hoping that things can continue on pretty speedy. Of course, you know, they're still concerned at some points in times about getting materials and all that type of stuff. But I will tell you, Western Builders and Roger is doing a great job of staying one step ahead and trying to get things ordered in order to get materials here on time. And so, but I think things are going well. I do know, of course, you'll remember the deadline, you know, is next December, but they're doing everything they can to beat that. And from what they're saying, they're really hopeful that they can beat that. So, Mr. Mills, anything you think of that need to add?
Do we need, do we need to even mention what we were talking about the equipment?
The furniture?
Yeah. Is that something we should mention?
Sure. I actually have a meeting set up with Jason Marino this afternoon. But one of the things that, you know, just, I guess the Graham County schools people sat down and started talking about was, you know, it won't be long before we'll need to start ordering furniture. And especially if we're going to, you know, that stuff's going to come to us, it's probably going to be in boxes, we're going to have to put it together. Of course, they're not going to allow us to put anything in that building until an inspection's done. And so basically we're at the point right now where we need to start looking and thinking about ordering furniture and where are we going to put it until it's ready to be moved in. And so actually Mr. Matheson was the one that gave me this idea about talking to Mr. Marino and just seeing if the county or the town might have somewhere where we could store some stuff, you know, in the meantime, you know, so when furniture and stuff starts coming in, because I'm afraid if we don't start ordering it pretty soon, you know, just like any other type of material delays that you have right now, you know, we just need to start ordering things. And so that's one thing that, like I said, I'm going to speak with Jason Marino today with the county and just kind of see if he has any ideas about where we might be able to store some stuff. So if you have any ideas about where we can store some stuff, that would be great.
Well, not just store, but give us an opportunity to go ahead and be assembling things. And because if we're looking at our maintenance crew doing this, I mean, that can be a 6-month project for them.
Yep.
They've already got a full-time job, so.
So, any questions about the new construction at the middle school? A couple other things that I did want to mention. Of course, the elementary gym down here is being used at this time. As far as bleachers go, you know, there's no bleachers in it, but we're hoping that the installation for those bleachers will be sometime, hopefully in March. Also with the auditorium over at the high school, from what best I can tell, the seats, everything's in. Just it makes it a lot more usable space, especially with the classroom teachers. And so there is a little bit more carpet work to be done. So there'll be some more things happening in there, but I just want to give you an update on that. One last thing I wanted to mention to you is, and some of you probably know about this already, but we've been having some issues with heat. Actually it's the boiler itself and I guess the components that talk to each other and all that type of stuff over here at the elementary school. Hopefully it's fixed, but we just did want to let you know that. It'd be really good to go to split units sooner than later, but
Yeah, we had to cancel school Friday morning. We've had some incidents with not having heat or heat being late, being turned on. It takes several hours. Once the boiler comes on, it takes several hours for it to travel all the way through that big school building because it kind of travels in sections. And so our maintenance director is up at 3 o'clock every morning to see if the heat is on. And because he can see that from a computer at his home, sometimes it has been, and sometimes in the last few weeks it has not, or it will start out and then it will go out. So we've had some issues, and that's what happened Friday morning. It was on for a little while, and then it went out, and then we did not have heat, and it was very cold. So
it was 34 degrees in the second and third grade building Friday morning.
Yeah, so, you know, unfortunately, we cannot have children in the building when it's that cold on and on. And it wasn't me getting warmer Friday, and so we just made the decision not to have school. You know, when we can't have school at the elementary school, it affects the other 2 schools as well, so because of the transportation. So just for your information, that's kind of a little backstory on that.
so I just wanted to make you aware of those issues. Any questions about facilities? Can I report on testing real quick while I'm here? Sure. Just real quick with testing, we're now in our window where we are doing access testing for the students that are considered English language learners. So Ms. Schreiber is actually testing as we speak, and she will be testing probably on and off for about the next 3 weeks, trying to get all that taken care of. I think I heard Mr. Nams a little while ago speak about check-in number 2, so it's time for check-in number 2 at the elementary and the middle school, so they'll be doing those over the course of the next week or so. Also, believe it or not, we've really, if you think about it, we're already far enough into the second semester for the high school biology to be doing their first check-in, so they started that last week. And also, on our next board meeting, I guess that's the 1st of March. We will actually be doing the ACT at the high school. So you may or may not see me that morning, but now I do know this night we do need to get the summer program testing, the retesting on the calendar for next week, for next month. Yeah. So anyway, the next board meeting, I'm gonna be a pretty busy guy. So, but anyway, we'll try to get that taken care of. Also, get you guys to, because I do have to submit to DPI our plans for the summer retesting program on April 1st. So the next only board meeting between now and then will be next month. So. Any questions for me?
Good job, Mr. White.
Thank you, Mr. White. Okay, COVID update, resolution, policy review, Ms. Knight.
Yes, so we come to this point in our agenda each month, first state statute that the board will determine whether or not you will continue with the mask mandate. We have asked our elementary school nurse, Ms. Jessica Beasley, to join us to help with any questions you may have that we cannot answer. I have provided in your packets, there's a form like this in your packets. If you want to look, that gives you an idea. This is the most updated that I have as of 1/21 of the counties that are across the state and the status that they were, whether they are mask optional or required. So there's that for your information. Ms. Hooper gave you an update on the numbers at the elementary school. I do have numbers, and Mr. Matheson and Mr. Nelms, y'all may just sort of know these numbers anyway at your schools, but as of yesterday, let's see, at the middle school, positive staff and quarantine staff, there were, I'm sorry, this is a chart and I'm having to look at this on my cell phone. There were no positive or quarantine staff, and we had 9 positive children and 15 quarantine children at the middle school. And at the high school, we had 7 positive staff members and 4 quarantine. Does that sound about right, Mr. Matheson? I believe.
Yeah, probably.
And then 7 positive kids and 24 quarantine students. So overall, looking at that compared to like last week, our numbers are down some. They're beginning to trend down. And Ms. Beasley, would you like to see where, I mean, I would like to read, while you're talking, I will then follow up with the latest health department update that came in this morning to all the department heads. So what you're seeing at schools,
I definitely see a decrease. I'd say it probably had halved from where we were at the end of the week to where we are today, the number of students that were out, at least at the elementary school.
Okay. All right, so the update from Beth Booth, which goes out to department heads across the county, from this morning was we remain in much the same pattern again this week. The state has rounded the corner. It is seeing the expected decrease in Graham County. We haven't seen this yet. However, we're starting to see the plateau in cases. There are some emerging variants, but none have made the variant of concern list at this time. Omicron continues to account for almost 100% of the current cases. So it looks like the state's beginning to see a decrease, and we always fall a couple weeks behind the state in trends.
Well, I think the whole country's seeing a decrease.
I would agree with that. So,
and Ms. Knight, may I say too, our high school and middle school nurse is out due to illness herself.
yes.
We did a conference call, Jessica and myself and Rudy did a conference call yesterday. And they also have opportunities to speak daily with one another, with the nursing staff themselves, to constantly be aware of the numbers and the trends.
Right. So that's the information that we have to give to you today regarding the mask.
That being said, you did at the end, you sent us an email at the end of January just before we got out. Was it I don't know if it was because of heat or because of snow. I think it was because of snow that we were hanging by a thread.
Well, at that
And
time,
this was the end of
I'd say
January, and we were in masks.
yeah, we were, I'd say that's probably a week, 10 days ago or something. And really, at that point, we had a lot of staff out. So the state statute now really has nothing to do with the number of students that are out, but with the number of staff, and are we able to safely supervise and instruct children with the amount of staff that we have available. And I would say that about a week and a half ago, we were at a critical point where we were pulling people to be in classrooms. Everybody that had bus license was on a bus. Cafeteria got to a critical point where there were people having over there and man that spot. But, knock on wood, today we are not at that point, and we hope that we're not going to see that for a while. So.
Well, my thought is mandates, and I've thought about this a lot, mandates curb a lot of activities, but it does not touch the COVID. personally. It doesn't touch COVID. And really, when we're talking about following the Tools for School and the Center for Disease Control and the American Academy of Pediatrics, and this is in our policy. This is in our policy. It says, and the North Carolina Health and Human Services, it is recommended. It is not a requirement. So we're really doing this to ourselves when we're saying we're going to quarantine kids, because it's a recommendation, not a requirement. And so our school system is doing that to ourselves. I don't know who decided to say we're going to quarantine kids. I say let's keep sick kids, send sick kids home, keep sick kids home. If they come to school sick, send them home. And, you know, like I say, we are masking our kids. I think some teachers maybe even are, I don't know, principals, you can tell me if they're exercising disciplinary measures for students not wearing a mask. But I do know that it's for indoors, and in our gym, we do not have people wearing masks, and we have students that have to have them on all day long. They go to a ball game, they see 99, what percentage, Mr. Matheson's not wearing them in the gym?
I'd say 90.
Okay, 90% not wearing a mask in the gym, when it is if we make it a mandate as a school board. And really what should be happening is we give them a mask when they go in the door. Most of the time they don't put it on, do they, Mr.
No, they do not.
But we are also not picking up the microphone and saying our school board has passed a mandate that you must wear a mask inside our school buildings. And that's not being done either. We're not making that announcement. We're not enforcing that. And once again, I feel like sports holds the trump card on this.
Well, I sat at the ball game last week with the person that was actually admitting people there, and her statement was, we have a mask mandate policy. Here's your change, here's your stamp, and please pick up a mask. That was told to everyone going through the door.
But do you think it would be effective, Mr. Matheson, if you or someone got on the loudspeaker and...
No, I don't. I mean, I'm just gonna
But you know, our kids are getting terrible mixed messages about, you know, here you are putting masks on us in school, and then we're coming to ball games and we don't even have a dub. That is just appalling to me. That,
And I don't like masks.
oh, I don't either.
I despise them. However, just going back to what Ms. Hooper said earlier, by having masks this last month, we probably kept from shutting school down.
Yes.
Why?
Yeah.
Because we would have sent more, because of the quarantine,
Of well kids.
the quarantine of Team Strong Schools Toolkit recommendations that we feel like through the health department, through the best practices, if we had not had masks, the recommendation would have been to send more kids home because there would have been more exposure. So, I mean, really masks, whether you believe in masks or not, I don't like masks personally, but that's not my call, it's your call. But it has made a difference in the kids that we're able to keep here and instruct on a daily basis.
I think we have to put education first, and you know, having a kid wear a mask in the room that prevents us from having to quarantine that student if there's a positive in that room protects education. Whether or not they wear one at the ball game or not.
That's an extracurricular.
That's extracurricular. I mean,
that's not the instructional day. But the other, you know, part of that I might bring on is y'all can vote for this today, and we're going to do whatever we need. But I think coming back from a break where we had a 2-week break, if you were ever going to have a mask mandate, that's probably the time when we know that people were gathering, purposely gathering. You know, the month of January, I think it was a wise decision on your part. It may be different at this point.
Mr. Madison and Mr. Stewart, does it even affect high school? Are you quarantining well kids in high school because of exposure?
Only if it's like a close exposure and there's proof of it. I mean, you know, we're not doing whole classes like we're having to do with the elementary school.
But you're not having to do whole classes now either unless it's little kids.
I'm not having to do whole classes at all because as long as we can say that everyone is in a mask, we only have to send home the positive child.
Okay.
But why do we do that anyway? Because it's just a recommendation.
I mean, I don't know how
It's a
that decision
recommendation.
is made,
It's a
but
recommendation that we do this, that we send kids that are.
That's a board issue though.
Yeah,
That's
I
not
mean,
a
we-
principal
I
issue.
think that's
I know, but I'm
taken
just
from the
asking.
state and, you know, Department of Public Health and the recommendation to keep kids in school.
I would be willing to look at going optional, as long as we understand that if there's any trend started going the wrong way again, that we convene immediately and take up whatever.
And remember, your trend will not be with students. If we have 50% of our students out, it really will not affect whether or not we go remote or any of that. So I mean, keep that in mind if you're thinking about whether we can just go remote or whatever, because that's going to have to do with our staff out.
And we have to keep in mind too, that, again, school would probably been shut down last month. That would shut, what else down as well? Sports
Oh, yeah.
would shut
Well, I
everything
think we
down.
were getting close to it anyway,
So,
with masks, right, Miss Knight?
I mean, we were dangerously close, but I think that we're following the trend now, maybe that the rest of the country, that the rest of the states, seeing that where we're seeing a decrease, you know, and it might make a difference in your decision at this point. So.
well, and to piggyback off of what Mr. Matheson says about keeping education in the forefront, if you decide to go mask optional, of course, that will put us back under the current requirement that we have for the quarantine and the contact tracing. And so even though that number may not shut school down because we're looking at staff, right? I mean, it may or it may not. I feel like that I will have whole classrooms in quarantine by the end of the week if we go this way. I can't know that for sure, but I just feel like it is a possibility.
Well, the board could vote to go in an absolute opposition of the recommendations from the state
Why doesn't
school
the board vote on that?
school toolkit. I mean, there is that, you know,
Right.
you choose to disregard any recommendations from the state school kit.
Because I will speak just for the elementary school.
Running off of Union, George Class Resolution, the quarantine.
It could have been, I'm not real familiar with that.
But in speaking for the elementary school, and I'm sure it's not really different for the middle and high, when you have, even though percentage of students that are in quarantine or positive may not result in a school shutdown, when you have 30% of your kids that are not at school, when you're having 40 and 50% of your
Teachers
kids
are having
that
their
are not
dual duties.
at school, you're not having regular school. You're having hard, difficult school.
And everything has to be retaught when the other students finally come back.
You're not making progress.
And the real issue is the faculty, and it's not said this several times. I mean, a week and a half ago, we were having to cover for 2 or 3 teachers a day because we couldn't get substitutes. I mean,
There was one point,
it was
Mrs.
a
Wright,
nightmare.
7 or 9, that she was having to cover.
Well,
I think the one request that I would have is that whatever decision you make today is that our school nurses are well equipped and well prepared to handle whatever decisions you make. If you're looking at quarantining many more children than what we are now, Ms. Knight or myself, if we could just reserve the right to have the additional help and assistance that we need. Can you give me guidance on that,
I
Jessica?
think that even with the 2 additional people we have right now, that they're absolutely working to capacity and then some. So I think if we're gonna look at quarantining even more kids, then you may need to at least think about bringing on somehow an additional one person that could be back and forth between the schools.
is it also not, if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask?
That would be a Jessica.
That's a,
Can you?
if you're fully vaccinated, you do not have to wear a mask. Is that not from the CDC?
We have, it doesn't state whether in the policies, it just says like exposures and different exemptions If you're masked or if you're vaccinated, it doesn't state whether you have a mask on while vaccinated.
On what
I
policy are you
think,
talking?
Pam, we need help when you read from things. We need it ahead of time. I'd like to have it. My understanding from this is different than yours. It's not if you're vaccinated, no mask. It's, again, it's a decision.
Yeah.
Like the state of California saying, they're going the route, if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. Well, they're getting ready to reconsider that because of the uptick. So we need help with whatever you're reading from. It's not the same I read from the CDC, that if you're vaccinated,
Well,
they're just allowing businesses or organizations where you have large groups. You can, not everyone's going to tell you they're vaccinated. Not everyone's going to show you the card. So there's flexibility, and they're trying to be flexible. But if you've got a classroom with 35 children out, you don't have school. So
Ms. Davis,
there's flexibility in these policies, and you're trying them. You're trying them. Your high school principal said education's first. There's some flexibility there. I mean, are you going to be able to, it's sort of like adopting a policy. Can you enforce it? Can you enforce the policy you're adopting? And that's the polar star in adopting any of your policies. Can the school enforce it?
So does the board need to have a work session? I mean,
Well, no, the board needs to vote today. You have to vote.
I know we have to vote today,
But it's
the hashing these
flexibility.
things out.
It's not accusing an organization, you can't do that, you can't, well, this says, it's flexibility. And it's saying, look at your rates. We're going to allow you now to start saying if you're vaccinated. I think they're getting ready to repeal that, but that's how an organization has to look at it. We can't collapse and close the doors like other businesses are having to do. You have to vote something today, but to have more input from Jamie, from Letitia, from David, and Tanya's out right now, but Mr. Nelms, for next month. But you're still looking at not a drop. You haven't had your plateau here yet. So again, it's a tough situation, but it's looking at the flexibility of these policies. And I read something different about the American Pediatric Association.
Well, I'm just saying this is in our board policy.
So we need, again, we need material to read.
I'm just going by our board policy. This is our.
Wait a second. Well, for COVID, we've had to change it according to.
I think this is the new one that you gave us. This is in the new folder that you gave us. This is the last thing that we got.
Oh gosh,
Yeah, this is the last thing we got.
I can't keep up with the voting every 30 days.
Do what?
I haven't.
No, I'm saying this is just in our policy that the board recognizes the use of face coverings. This is the newest thing that we went over of the Center for Disease Control, American Pediatrics, and the Occupational Health and Safety Administration, North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services recommend the use of face covering in schools. This is in our board policy, recommends it. And this was the latest thing that you went over because I keep all of these in the little folders that you give us. So that it's recommended. We don't have in our policy that it's required.
But you can't, your policy, you have in your policy that you follow all the laws as they change. We can't cover every policy change.
Well, has it changed? Has it changed?
Well, yeah, it changes with flexibility.
I mean, has it changed?
Yes. The American Pediatric Association is recommending
What about
their policies.
What about
Wait, Dan, I don't know, I'm just saying, flexibility is the issue. This has changed every 30 days. That has not been changed.
So my understanding, really, the only thing that the board has the authority at this point, or the burden of, is whether or not you're mask optional or not.
That's correct.
I think that is the board's decision. The rest of it is not particularly board.
It doesn't make any difference. What's required of every Board of Education in 100 counties is a vote every 30 days.
So why are we quarantining whole classes then?
or not.
Is this we're not, I just heard them say, we're not, I mean,
We are,
preschool,
we're not
yes,
masked.
maybe.
The smart school or the strong schools policy, we're following that.
Is it a recommendation?
No, it says if there's exposure in a masked required school setting, the individuals in masked required school settings do not need to be excluded from school after a close contact, including unmasked exposures during lunch or extracurricular activities. But then if you have the opposite of in unmasked schools, so if a person is in a mask optional setting, so if we go to mask optional, people must be excluded from school for 5 days after exposure. The person may return to school after exclusion if asymptomatic.
And that is a requirement.
And yeah, it doesn't say it's optional. It just says
It doesn't
this is
say
what has to be
the
done.
toolkit doesn't say it's a recommendation.
No, it says person has to be excluded from school in mask optional settings. In mask required settings.
Well, you need, so it's not, if it's a recommendation, probably you need to read that statement to us so that we can see where that's at. Because right now, she's reading straight from that. So where is it? I mean, the whole, I guess I'm trying to figure out, you know.
I didn't bring my latest toolkit you gave me.
Is this updated yesterday? Who was the update?
These are on that one.
Who was the latest update?
Yeah, it's from the 10th. I just printed it slowly. Sorry.
But this is the reason we need a work session as a board. Our board meetings are not so long. And most boards do have working sessions.
I will say about this is that this changes about every week. So you can have a work session next week and then the next week it's going to change again.
And then this was last updated on the 10th, but it was also updated the week before that with different requirements. It just hasn't been updated since the 10th. I didn't think I needed it.
Yeah, but this is just our guidelines for recommendation.
Yeah, it's the strong schools recommendations.
It is a recommendation.
There's
Yes.
a long list of them.
They recommend it, they don't require it.
So then is it a board decision whether we're gonna go by these recommendations or not?
So Attorney Davis, I guess you'll have to answer
And
that.
that's, well, you took the words out of my mouth. I mean, I think I'm not sure what's going on here now, but the only mandate you have is to make a decision every 30 days. And what your superintendent has showed you is about approximately 75 or 80 school districts have it required. Some have it required based on positivity rates. The mandate you have is to make a decision about masks. My recommendation is that do not equivocate over the word recommendation. Your mandate is to make a decision. Someone recommends this, someone recommends this, someone recommends this. You're going to look at all of that and make a decision. That's your mandate. And the only thing you've been mandated by the General Assembly is every 30 days. Look at the evidence, look at who's recommending what, and let's not get hung up on the word recommendation. You have a mandate. You look at all the material, you look at our statistics, you look at our positivity rate, you look at how many children we're sending home, and based on all these organizations and the General Assembly, you have to tackle. I mean, that's a big item on your plate to tackle and say what's going to happen the next 30 days.
What I'm saying is,
And I hope that helps you. I mean, it's just make a decision. Here's what's being done in your 100 school systems. And you have to calculate liability. You have to calculate what the General Assembly's told you. You have to calculate what your health department has told you. And you all have to digest that and make that decision. And you want it to be a good one.
but Ms.
Because
Davis,
the Board of Education is liable for everything.
it's a recommendation
So,
from all these.
Quit saying, I'm sorry, stop saying that. Of course it's a recommendation. We have recommendations from the General Assembly. We have recommendations from the State Board of Education. you have to make the final decision based on the evidence and recommendations and relying on your staff. I mean, that's who has the real information. And your health department. So just focus on your mandate. It is a mandate and you decide the date. And you make it on all the recommendations. You've heard a recommendation from Jamie. You've heard one from your high school principal. You've heard it from the American Pediatric Association. You've heard it from your 100 school systems. So just focus on the mandate.
But Ms. Davis, how can we focus on the mandate if we can't go back and get rid of this quarantining well kids? How can we do that? How can we just focus on the mask mandate when we have this hanging over our heads of
You use all the
quarantining well kids?
recommendations. You listen to your staff, you listen to your health department, you look at the state of North Carolina, local education agencies, there's 100 of them.
Ms. Wiggins, you've had something to kind of say.
I do, actually. Miss Trudy Brackett, our lead school nurse, I mentioned to you earlier, is ill today, but she has sent me a text message. I'm assuming she's probably watching live. And her information that she wants me to read to you says this: we as nursing professionals have to have some evidence-based guidance to use to guide our practice. The Safe Schools Toolkit is that guidance for school nurses in North Carolina related to COVID. It is based on the latest research available, which is why it is updated so frequently, and it is what all school systems in North Carolina use. It is divided into 3 sections. All schools shall, should, could. The section for quarantine/masks is under should, which means any prudent person would enlist that guidance. So this is from our lead health school nurse.
Well, I go along with what Mr. Carrier said.
This may open a whole other can of worms, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Could the board require masks with the exception of extracurricular activities after school?
What message does that send?
Well, I'm just asking
I mean,
because we're not
that's how
enforcing
it
it
is.
anyway, like
That's
Ms.
right.
Mom said.
There's no way to enforce it.
I mean, so, you know,
I think that sends a mix, as a superintendent.
Yeah,
I think
I'm
that
just
sends a- Yeah, and I understand why you asked it, because that's kind of how it falls out.
well, that's the way it's going.
Yeah. And I see why you said that.
Mr. Carringer, will you state what you said previously?
Still
I liked it.
I'm still thinking,
You're still what?
thinking, processing.
Okay.
Okay, next.
So bottom line,
The next step.
and I'm addressing this toward Ms. Beasley, if we go mask option and student X is tested positive, doesn't matter what grade he or she's in, does the whole class have to go home?
At the elementary school, potentially.
At the high school, no.
Now, what's the difference in the high school? I mean,
So the difference is, in the high school setting, those students are mature enough they know who they've been in close contact with and can tell you. Whereas maybe a kindergartner has no idea, they've been all over the room.
oh,
Did you see what I'm saying?
yes, sir.
But were the clusters not working well, Ms. Hooper?
Well, so we try to keep kids in clusters as much as possible, but there's just times that it's not possible. When you're lining up for lunch, when you're in PE, when you're eating in the cafeteria, so we try to keep them in clusters as much as possible in the room, but because it's 6 feet
That's my
for
understanding.
15 minutes cumulative throughout the day, it's really, it's a moot point.
And I think where someone's getting exposed is at lunch and at TV and places like that.
And most of our positives and most of our quarantines have come from community exposure. I think that's important also.
It is. We've had very little spread here at school.
Yeah.
We have had some.
We have had some, but most of the positives and the quarantines come from community exposure. But the clusters are just not as effective at the elementary school because I might set you over here with your friend, but you still gonna go across the room and talk to whoever you want to talk to. I mean, that's just how it is.
Well, my prayer every day is we get to an endemic real soon.
I agree.
And treat this like a virus.
Feel functional.
I'm going to throw something out for principals. So we like our numbers. We like our numbers as far as the trend. We don't want anybody to be sick. Don't take me wrong, but our numbers seem to be going in the right direction. Agree? So to ensure that keeps in place, what would you think about the board? I can't speak for anybody else, but what would you think about the board if we stayed masked up for 2 weeks to ensure that trend keeps going downward and then go optional? I told you I was still thinking.
We would- We would have to have a special call meeting to,
If we would have done it today, we could say, we could pick a date,
mask.
February the 11th, we go optional.
It's winter
The winter formal is Saturday night unless the wrestling team is in the state championship, and then we'll be postponed.
Why is that?
Because the wrestling team will be in Greensboro, and the
The whole-
principal,
the
the
whole
assistant
team?
principal,
The
the whole team, it's a dual team, yeah. So your administration will be gone, and I mean, you know, we're gonna try to do it on a day where everyone can attend also. They have a large group of seniors that I would like to be.
But we knew that February the 5th was this duel. Why did we schedule the winter?
Well, we didn't originally have it scheduled
Oh, it
that day.
wasn't
It's not, no, we had to cancel it because of the situation. So many people had COVID, a few weeks ago. And so we went ahead and postponed it. Hope, you know, I'll be honest with you, one of the reasons we postponed it is because when I was approached, I was asked, were kids gonna have to wear a mask at the winter formal if we go ahead and have it? And I said, absolutely.
Yeah, they would.
And so we postponed to February 5th, you know, hoping maybe the cases go down, and maybe it wouldn't have to be a mask required to dance. But, you know, if we go 2 weeks, then yes, we will require them to wear a mask at the dance. So
If they had it Saturday.
we did have, well, it's scheduled for Saturday, but it will be based on the outcome of the wrestling match tomorrow night. We may push it on back, and we've been looking for dates. We're even considering possibly having it on February 23rd, which is a remote school day, but it's in the middle of the week, but we may have it that day. So, I mean, we're looking at several different dates. There's just so many things that are going on right now that it's, I'm telling you, it's about impossible. I mean, you got basketball playoffs coming right up too. I mean, you know, and I know our girls, you know, team's gonna go probably pretty deep in the playoffs, so. And I mean, hopefully our boys too, but it's, so trying to schedule the winter formal around those things is very difficult.
It's usually in January, isn't it? But you changed it.
We changed it because of COVID, yes.
There was such a high positivity rate
Yes,
that.
I mean, it was terrible.
That's true.
Yeah.
And very.
But we were in mass too.
Yeah. No, but if the board did say, you know, with the exception of after school, extracurricular activities, we would have to wear a mask at the dance. Just saying.
The flip side of that for me is I don't think you can 5-year-old in a mask for reading and then not have to wear a mask at the dance.
I'm not gonna open that can of worms with parents, I can tell you.
Yeah.
Because I've already been down that road with some parents already.
It's just a tough time.
It's awful.
Well, somebody
There's
made a
no good.
statement, to be in education and to be in the medical field during this time has been the worst professions that you can be in.
Yeah.
And that's what I was trying to say. You
Yes.
take all the information, know what you're the one that has to say,
That's true.
A, B, C. And you have all these recommendations, you have all this advice. You're the ones mandated to say, this is what to happen.
So so if you had a kid that wanted to optionally wear a mask, Miss Hooker, in class, and they were put in close contact, they wouldn't have to quarantine.
Unless everyone is masked, it doesn't apply. Is that not correct?
It's mask on mask.
Everyone has to be
Even
masked.
though they've been vaccinated.
Yeah, we don't make these rules, we just try to interpret them on a daily basis. But I am understanding that possibility that there's coming out from the state level or wherever these things come from, that, the quarantine, some of that stuff is gonna be relieved a little bit, and they're looking for that to come down state level today, because we're talking about what happens today, it has not. I mean, it could come back by the end of the day, or tomorrow, or next week. I don't know, and I have no idea what it's gonna look like. But I have heard that there's a possibility some of that will be, relieved a little. But I don't know any more than that. And it may not happen.
Okay, I know we have to move on, I'm quiet now.
I have one more question, I'm so sorry. And this may be opening up another can of worms that we don't want to open up. But it does look different at the elementary than it does at middle and high school with older children and them being able to identify their close contacts. We're seeing a downward trend. Could the board say we are going to be masked or mask optional or whatever, mask optional, but should the number of students in quarantine at any one school reach the level of, let's say 25%, that's 1 out of every 4 kids is in quarantine, then that school has to go back to a mask requirement for a minimum of a week to see if the numbers come down, and then so then that way, I don't know, is that even a possibility? Would that
So
work?
it says here that some of the other school boards have done that when they reach a certain positivity rate.
They go back into mask?
But is it regarding the student now, or is it regarding the ability to take care of those students? That's where I'm confused.
Well, so it's the remote instruction, being able to close for remote instruction that has to do with the ability to take care of the kids. Positivity rate in this could be considered, I guess. This is all new. We're all going down we're all building a plane as we fly it with COVID. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
And I'll be honest with you, I think we have more civil conversations than a lot of other school boards do. So are you saying put mask on back on elementary and not middle school and high
I'm
school?
saying that if you set a certain threshold, if you say 25% or whatever you would determine that threshold would be, whether it's at the elementary,
Positivity
the
rate,
middle,
not quarantines, but positivity.
positivity rate, once it gets to that level of positivity rate, regardless of what school it's in, they would be required to mask, and you could say for a week, for 10 days, for whatever, to bring it down. I mean, I don't know.
And it's,
I've read based on positivity rate of 10%, but I think the health nurse would be better. We use 10.
It would have to be pretty low, because, I mean, our positivity rate's not been extremely high in any school.
No, I mean,
It's the
probably been like
quarantine.
1%, 2%, yes.
Yeah. So it would have to be a pretty low number for the positivity rate.
I was thinking of the whole quarantine rate, but yes, for the positivity rate.
What are you thinking, Mr. Madison?
Well, just take a look at the high school. We have about 350 kids, so if it was 10%, that would mean 35 positives. At no time have we had 35 positives at the high school
Ever.
at this point. So, I mean, I think 10% would be, it would be pretty bad if we got 10%. There's no doubt about that.
And at the elementary school, if you're not talking about quarantine rate, you're talking about positivity rate, that would be for us, 54 positive kids.
And
We've
you've
not
never
reached that.
And that's 10%.
That would be 10%. We got 542 kids.
So could we do mask optional and come back in 2 weeks and revisit? Like Mr. Candy was saying?
We could, based on positivity rate.
And could we have a work session, a little work session? Is that possible?
2 weeks.
Me personally, at high school, I like the idea of kind of separating the schools like that, because it is different. I mean,
It is
you
different.
know,
I think that it will warrant coming back and discussing if you reach that 10% positivity rate.
Well, that's terribly high.
Or whatever
The
percentage you
state-
say.
Coming from the Raleigh office of state health, I think it's more like 6%.
Well, we would need to find that out. How can we find that
Well,
out?
you're gonna set your own, yours,
5%
this
would
is
be
your.
18 kids for us, it was at 5%, so you're talking, you know, I would say 6 or 7% is probably a pretty reasonable number, just based on the data we've had in the past.
Well, and at the elementary school, we're gonna be close. If it's set at 6 to 7%, we'll have to go back and run the numbers, but we'll be close.
I'd say 10%. I'd say 10%. And I'm like Mr. Madison. I like the idea because those schools are like, and is it not my understanding that we can send one school home and the other 2 schools could be in session at some point in time?
If you don't have the staff to cover it, not the kids. This has nothing to do with
Staff,
kids.
if we don't have staff,
Staff.
then like the elementary could be home, but the middle and high school could be in school.
Talking 2 different things though.
That's what I'm just saying.
It makes it difficult, because I've got a kid in middle school, and I've got 2 kids in elementary. That's gonna be very difficult.
I will say this, I'm not very concerned about staff numbers, because so many of our staff have had it in the past 6 weeks.
Lots
we're
of
getting
people
better.
have had it.
Yeah.
Mr. Allison, I think your comment was very important that you just made about having kids across
Yeah,
grade levels.
2 different days.
That could be a lot of families across the county.
Oh, yeah, it would be sure.
That's just gonna be a lot of confusion, I believe.
Yeah, I'm not for closing one, leaving the other 2 open, Make a motion then that, ready for a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I can word this. I do like what you said, Ms. Hooker, maybe we need to, so you're saying 10% threshold? You comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with whatever y'all decide.
Make a motion that then we go maskless. Yes, how can I pull this down on
Can
the
you
top?
say optional mask?
Optional, yeah. Optional, with the understanding, that if any school reaches that, 10% threshold, they'll mask back up, and the board willing to meet at any time to make necessary changes to this, recommendation.
Would we need to meet if we reach?
With the exception of school buses, which are still.
Right. Well, if we start seeing a trend in any of them going in the wrong direction, I think we need to meet immediately. I mean, if it's next Monday or 2 weeks from Monday, I mean, we just need to be ready to act. So,
If it's not 10%?
So Ms. Williams has some other.
Well, and Ms. Brackett has also asked us to clarify this as well, and our nurses will be on the front lines with this. She said that she's happy to go mask optional if that's the route that you all choose to go. But she says, I just feel we should continue to follow the guidelines we have, quarantine based on exposure in the toolkit. I think not quarantining kids because it's not worded as a requirement is in direct opposition to everything parents will be told by the health department, which could be very confusing. So I think what she's asking us to clarify is whatever decision that you choose to make, factor in how the toolkit will be a part of your decision making.
I think we follow the toolkit personally. It's pretty good to us.
If you don't follow it, you're gonna be liable.
Yeah, I'm not for, I don't think we should alter it. That's, I'm just.
What'd you say, Mr.
I'm just one member.
If you don't follow it, then you're setting yourself to be liable for.
So her recommendation is follow the toolkit that we've been following. Don't
Based
make any
on,
changes to it.
based on the way I have read this and my own interpretation is that's published for schools as best and safest practices. And if we don't equip them with some knowledge on how to operate your school system, they're shooting in the dark.
Yeah, follow the toolkit.
And so even though that's gonna mean that more children at the elementary school are gonna be put into quarantine, we're still basing the mask requirement on not a quarantine rate, a positivity rate.
That's correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that for myself.
So your motion is,
I have to restart on the motion.
Go optional with the understanding that any school reaching that 10% threshold of positivity, then they would mask up just immediately. Also, with the understanding that if there's an uptick or an unusual change in our numbers starting to go back up, then we meet as necessary as a school board. Is that you?
Did you say toolkit? You said
And that we follow the toolkit that's been given to us. No alterations to it. That clear, Ms. Davis? Ms. Myers?
Mr. Nelson, you got that?
I'm not sure. Mask optional with understanding that any school gets to 10%, they have to go back to the mask. And or if numbers start to go up school-wide, district-wide, then we'd have to mask up. Is that what you're saying?
The board reconvene and the board reconvene again when and if necessary to make needed adjustments to
If
the school
numbers
system.
go up.
And that we continue to follow the toolkit as we have followed thus far. Good motion.
Okay, let's see if I get this right. All right. Mr. Carringer has made a motion that masks be optional with the understanding that any school reaches 10% positive, that they would have to mask up, and if numbers go up district-wide, they would have to mask everyone, and the board reconvene and follow the toolkit set up by the health department.
Yeah, we would need to reconvene first before we
Exactly.
went district-wide.
Before we went, yeah.
So mask optional.
Reconvene before
We put masks back on.
we
When it hits the 10%, we
Go to it in.
That's good.
Yeah.
And then we reconvene to look at the problem.
If district-wide trends go in the wrong direction, then we reconvene and make a decision.
so Mr. Moody and I will take on the responsibility of sending you data every day. And we will also, as we send that out weekly, as part of our social media campaign.
Okay, do I need to read that motion again? I think I do. It's a lot of information. This is really confusing. Mr. Carringer has made a motion that we go mask optional with the understanding that any school reaches 10% positive, we go back to the mask mandate. If numbers continue to go up, we need to reconvene before we put masks back on the whole district.
I think to make that a little bit more concise, maybe it is that at this time, the board's recommendation would be mask optional with the understanding that if the positivity rate at any school reached 10%, the board will reconvene and discuss what the next steps would be with the mask mandate.
I think that's an easier.
Is that a more
That
concise?
sounds a
That's
lot.
an easier motion.
With the recommendation that we follow the recommendations in the North Carolina Strong Schools Toolkit as they are stated.
Can I say?
I'll second that.
There you go.
she can't make a motion,
That's right.
but
I had just restated it. for Mr.
Are you gonna read that again then, Mr.?
I don't know.
Garland
You won't,
seconded it.
because
We've already got
All
a
right.
second.
I second
I'll move it back.
Yep.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second on the floor. That we go option. And, unless we get to 10% positive in any school. And then we would have to reconvene as a board and vote again on the mask optional or mask mandate. And we have a motion and a second
wait a minute, and continue to follow the toolkit.
and continue to follow the toolkit.
That's it.
So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? So I didn't see any opposed. So we are mask optional until one school gets 10% positive. Okay? And Mr. Moody and Ms. Knight will keep us updated with the numbers.
Or if it comes in India. Which is sooner than later.
Okay. Next item, general records schedule, local government agencies retention of documents, 2021 program record schedule, local public school units for retention of operational records. Ms. Davis.
All right. The state cultural resources has always regulated the records retention and disposition for local government agencies, of which you're one, and also local public school units. And it's about this thick, and every now and then the schedule for retention and disposition changes. And the superintendent and the chair actually executes the agreement to follow this retention and disposition schedule. And what I've done is, for what's happening currently, it's 3 columns. One's changes, new items, or discontinued items. And I'll provide that to your superintendent. So you're adopting the local public school records retention and disposition schedule. And then you're also adopting the local government agency on record retention. And again, it's set up with changes, new items, and discontinued items. So from the basics that you already have, it'll be these changes. And then you'll execute both of these, and I'll send them to Robbie. So,
Do they have a copy of this?
excuse me?
Do they have a copy of this somewhere?
No, I didn't get one copy. I've got this for,
It's on a little.
it's all the records you have, like special education records, employment records, and they're the changes, new items, and discontinued items. But there's a basic act that was passed though, and this just changes those portions of the act.
Is there somewhere we can find that online, Ms. Davis?
Well, it's right here. I don't know.
Would
It's
you like
right
to
here.
go
You
get
can
my
make
copies of that for the
Yeah.
board? They can look at it maybe during closed session and come back and make a decision.
Or we'll put it on the agenda then for next meeting, because it's really not a closed session.
Okay, so we'll make copies and it can be on the.
And I just need to get it, when it's finally approved, get it signed, I'll send you some top sheets. But these are the changes.
So this will be like the first reading.
It could be, yeah. It's really not a policy, it's the Department of Cultural Resources requiring this of every local government and every school. And you're both. It's not a policy, it's just, you have to follow, it's another state organization you have to follow. You have to follow the State Board of Education. You also have to follow the State Cultural Resources Department. Does that make, it's really not.
So we're supposed to approve this
approve it, sign it, and it goes to Raleigh that you're following this retention and disposition schedule.
But I would still like to read it, but.
Well, sure.
Yeah, I'd like to know what that is too. We can just get a copy of it.
Okay, and this is a copy right here. Like how long you have to keep agendas, what you have to turn into Raleigh.
Right.
What they can call and ask for archiving. This is archiving, basically. A public agency and a board of education. It's archiving.
And how long do they keep those? How far back, in other words, how far back do we have to go?
That, Mr. Green has some, he
He's
deals
got
with this all the time.
There's a schedule there that tells you how long to retain certain records.
Yes.
Personnel records you would keep indefinitely. Okay? My daily deposit records, I could dispose of those after 3 years if that's what the schedule says. Okay? That's an example of what this.
Exceptional children records, you have to keep for X number of years after they would have graduated the system.
Okay.
You know, copies of W-2s, you keep those, until, okay? You know, workers' comp records, there's a schedule there that tells you what type of records and how long
And it's
you
just
have to
adopting
keep
the new
them.
schedule of what,
Yes.
that's really what that's what this is adopting the new records schedule.
Yes,
That's both of those, correct?
right, for a local government agency and then a board of education.
Who are we calling a local government agency?
Y'all.
Board. Well, can we not just go ahead
A
and
public
do it?
board.
Do you feel comfortable in going ahead and doing it?
Yeah, I think that like this is just updating.
That's
an
updating what
existing
you already
policy.
have, and actually the updates are pretty good.
Or existing procedure, really, more than a
Yeah.
policy, more of a procedure.
It's a requirement for,
It's not a choice.
you don't have, no,
It's
you
not a
have to
choice.
keep it X years. So.
It's
in
just
other
really
words-
you're just affirming that you've seen this change to the records schedule,
Yes.
essentially.
Do we have to vote on that then? We do?
You do, but, well, you have to sign off that that you've adopted the changes to your record keeping.
Do we have to do that today
No.
before
But
we have
you need to do it soon. I mean, if you want to put it on the next board meeting,
We do this,
You don't
don't
have
we
a
do
choice.
this every year?
well, no, they didn't change it every year.
Just
Oh, okay.
as it
Periodically.
changes, just periodically, yeah.
It's, the biggest change was 1999, I mean, it was massive. Then the next change was 2017, and you did it. And this is, I'm surprised it's come this quick again, this quickly, but you don't have a choice, it's record retention for public bodies. And it's the person who or the entity that controls that is our North Carolina Department of Natural Resources. Is actually who controls it.
What's the pleasure of the board? Do y'all want to vote on this today, or you want to wait till the next board meeting?
I'm comfortable voting today.
I am too, it's
I
just
think I'm
routine.
from voting today, now that Ms. Davis is it
All right,
correct.
that's fine with me. All right, do I have a motion to approve the general record schedule for the local government agencies' retention of documents and the local public school units for retention of operational records?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Any opposed? That takes care of that. Okay, now, do I have a motion to go into closed session?
Pursuant to the provision of the North Carolina General Statute 143-31A.11, parentheses A, parentheses 3, and 143-318.11, parentheses C, I move that the Graham County Board of Education go into closed session to receive advice from Ms. Ellen Davis, attorney for Graham County Board of Education, which advice comes within the purview of the attorney-client privilege. This advice will be general legal advice about legal issues and legal matters. Pursuant to the provision of North Carolina General Statute 143-31A.11, parentheses C, I move that the Graham County Board of Education go into closed session for the purpose of considering personnel matters as defined in and allowed by the North Carolina General Statute 143-3118.11, parentheses 6, parentheses A, parentheses 6, and the North Carolina General Statute 115C-321.
Do I have a second? All in favor? We are now in closed.